Every great football club begins with a story. For Manchester United, that story starts in 1878, not under the floodlights of Old Trafford, but in the smoky industrial heart of Manchester. A group of railway workers from the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Company came together to form a football team. They called it Newton Heath LYR Football Club. They played on rough pitches and wore green and gold, colors that still hold symbolic meaning for United fans today. At the time, it wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about pride, representing their workplace and community on weekends after long shifts in the railway yards. Newton Heath began competing in local leagues and later joined the Football League in 1892. But the early years were tough. The team struggled financially and performed poorly against stronger, more established clubs. By 1902, the club was drowning in debt and on the verge of being shut down. But fate had other plans. Local brewery owner named John Henry Davies stepped in to save the club. He paid off the debts, invested new money, and gave the team a new identity. Newton Heath became Manchester United Football Club. The red and white colors we know today were adopted, and a new chapter began. With new financial backing and ambition, Manchester United began to rise. Under manager Ernest Mangnall, the club built a reputation for attacking football and signed talented players who could challenge the best in England. In 1908, Manchester United won their first ever league title, a moment that cemented their name in English football history. The following year, in 1909, they added their first FA Cup, defeating Bristol City at Crystal Palace. The red half of Manchester was born. In 1910, the club moved into its new home, Old Trafford. It was a magnificent stadium for its time, capable of holding 80,000 spectators. Nicknamed the Theatre of Dreams, it would go on to host some of the greatest moments in football history. However, those early years were far from easy. When World War I broke out in 1914, football across Europe came to a halt. Many United players joined the war effort, and the club struggled to maintain form. After the war, Manchester United's performances dipped, and by the 1920s, they were relegated to the second division. It was a difficult time, money was tight, morale was low, and the club was searching for a new identity in a changing football world. The 1920s and 1930s were years of struggle and rebuilding. United bounced between divisions, often overshadowed by rivals like Manchester City. In fact, during this period, City enjoyed more success, even winning the FA Cup in 1934 while United were fighting to stay afloat. But even in hardship, United's fanbase grew. Supporters from working-class Manchester saw the team as their own, fighters who refused to give up, no matter how hard times became. In 1939, as Europe was plunged into the chaos of World War II, football once again stopped. Manchester United's stadium, Old Trafford, was hit by German bombing raids in 1941, leaving it heavily damaged. The club was forced to share Manchester City's main road stadium for several years. It was another dark chapter in United's history, but one that would set the stage for rebirth. From the rubble of war, Manchester United would soon rise again, stronger, hungrier, and destined for greatness. After the war ended, Manchester United appointed a young, visionary manager named Matt Busby in 1945. He believed football was about creativity, youth, and team spirit. His philosophy would transform Manchester United into one of the greatest football clubs in history. And that's where our next chapter begins, with a man who would build a dynasty from the ashes of war. This was the story of Manchester United's humble beginnings, from railway workers to a football powerhouse, from Newton Heath to the rise of Old Trafford. When Sir Matt Busby arrived in 1945, Manchester United was a club in ruins, its stadium destroyed by bombs, its finances unstable, and its players scattered after the war. But Busby saw more than a broken club. He saw potential, a sleeping giant waiting to awaken. He believed that football was about trust, unity, and youth. He didn't want to rely on expensive signings. Instead, he wanted to build something special, a team of young players who would play for each other, and for the fans. Busby's philosophy was revolutionary for its time. While most clubs relied on seasoned veterans, he placed his faith in youth. His assistant, Jimmy Murphy, shared the same vision. Together, they began to assemble a team that would define a generation. This team became known as the Busby Babes, young, fearless, and full of flair. In the early 1950s, Manchester United began to dominate English football. With stars like Duncan Edwards, Roger Byrne, Tommy Taylor, and Eddie Coleman, they played with pace, creativity, and courage. In 1952, United won their first league title under Busby, their first in 41 years. But the real magic was yet to come. By 1956 and 1957, the Busby Babes had conquered England again, winning back-to-back league titles. They were the youngest champions in history, with an average age of just 22. But then, tragedy struck. On February 6, 1958, the team was returning from a European Cup match in Belgrade. Their plane stopped in Munich to refuel. Snow and ice covered the runway. On the third attempt to take off, the aircraft failed to gain speed and crashed. Out of 44 people on board, 23 lost their lives. 8 were Manchester United players. Among them, the great Duncan Edwards, who many believed would become one of the world's greatest footballers. The world mourned. Manchester was silent. The Busby Babes were gone. Matt Busby was critically injured but survived. As he lay in his hospital bed, he told his wife he would retire. But she reminded him, "You've started something, Matt. Finish it." So he did. Under Jimmy Murphy's temporary leadership, United somehow reached the FA Cup final that same year. Though they lost to Bolton Wanderers, the courage they showed inspired the world. Busby returned, determined to rebuild, not just a football team, but a family. Throughout the 1960s, Busby built a new Manchester United. He brought in experienced players like Dennis Law, Pat Crerand, and a young genius from Belfast, George Best. Alongside Bobby Charlton, one of the few Munich survivors, these three became known as the United Trinity, representing skill, power, and spirit. In 1963, Manchester United lifted the FA Cup, their first trophy after Munich. Then, in 1965 and 1967, they captured 2 more league titles, proving they were back among England's elite. Busby had one dream: to conquer Europe. 10 years after Munich, that dream came true. On May 29, 1968, at Wembley Stadium, Manchester United faced Benfica in the European Cup final. After extra time, United triumphed 4-1. Goals from Bobby Charlton, George Best, and Brian Kidd sealed history. For the first time ever, an English club had won the European Cup. And for Busby, it was destiny fulfilled, the dream of his fallen babes, finally realized. Sir Matt Busby's era was not just about trophies. It was about resilience, faith, and family. He built more than a football club, he built an identity. Manchester United became a symbol of hope. From tragedy to triumph, they showed the world that even in the darkest times, true spirit never dies. This was the Busby era, the story of heartbreak, courage, and victory. In the next part, we explore how United faced the challenges of the 1970s and 80s, and how a fiery Scotsman named Alex Ferguson would change the club forever. The 1960s had ended in glory. Sir Matt Busby and his men had conquered Europe. But with great triumph came the challenge of what comes next. As the 1970s began, Manchester United stood at a crossroads. The heroes of the 60s were aging, the magic of the Busby Babes had faded, and change was inevitable. Sir Matt Busby retired in 1969, leaving behind a legacy that would forever define the club. But what followed was a difficult transition, one filled with instability, heartbreak, and lessons that would shape United's future. United's next decade was turbulent. Wilf McGuinness, Busby's former player, took over as manager, but struggled to fill such giant shoes. Frank O'Farrell followed, but neither could restore consistency. By 1974, just 6 years after being European champions, Manchester United, one of England's biggest clubs, was relegated from the First Division. It was a shocking moment. Dennis Law, one of United's greatest ever players, had scored the goal that sent his former club down. But even in the darkness, the fans never abandoned the team. Old Trafford remained full, the songs never stopped, Manchester United's spirit lived on. In 1975, under Tommy Docherty, United bounced back to the top division. He built a young and fast team that played exciting football. 2 years later, in 1977, United defeated Liverpool in the FA Cup final, denying their rivals a potential treble. It was redemption, a glimpse of the old magic returning. But controversy struck again. Docherty was dismissed after personal issues, and United's instability continued. Managers came and went. Dave Sexton, Ron Atkinson, all brought flashes of brilliance, but not long-term success. Still, there were bright moments, like the FA Cup victories in 1983 and 1985, and players such as Brian Robson, Captain Marvel, who carried the team through its toughest days. In November 1986, a fiery Scotsman from Aberdeen arrived to take charge, Alex Ferguson. He wasn't a global name yet, but his record spoke for itself. He had broken the dominance of Celtic and Rangers in Scotland, and even beaten Real Madrid in Europe. When he took over United, the club was struggling, 19th in the league, morale low, and performances inconsistent. Ferguson had a vision, to rebuild Manchester United from the ground up, focusing on youth, discipline, and hard work. But the journey wouldn't be easy. His early years were tough. Results were poor. The press wanted him gone. Some fans even joined in the calls for his dismissal after disappointing finishes. Yet, behind the scenes, Ferguson was planting seeds, reshaping the youth academy, scouting local talent, enforcing professionalism, and setting new standards for the club. In 1990, everything changed. United won the FA Cup, defeating Crystal Palace in a dramatic final replay. That victory saved Ferguson's job, and set the foundation for everything that followed. The 1990s would belong to Manchester United. Ferguson's vision was now coming to life. He won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1991, proving that United could compete in Europe again. Then came the arrival of Eric Cantona in 1992, a genius, a leader, and a symbol of Ferguson's boldness. Cantona brought flair and attitude. Alongside the rise of young talents like Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, David Beckham, Gary Neville, and Nicky Butt, United's dynasty began. When the Premier League was formed in 1992, Manchester United were ready. In 1993, they won the inaugural Premier League title, ending a 26-year wait for a league championship. The floodgates opened. Ferguson's men went on to dominate English football, winning 4 of the first 5 Premier League titles. Players like Cantona, Giggs, and Roy Keane became household names. United were not just a football team, they were a global brand. And then came the greatest season in the club's history, the 1998-1999 treble. United won the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the UEFA Champions League, all in one historic campaign. It began with a fierce domestic battle against Arsenal and ended with one of football's most dramatic nights ever. Camp Nou, United trailed Bayern Munich 1-0 as the clock struck 90 minutes. Then, from 2 corners, everything changed. Teddy Sheringham equalized. Seconds later, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer scored the winner. 2 goals in stoppage time, United had done the impossible. The treble was complete, the first and only English team to achieve it. Sir Alex Ferguson was knighted soon after. Manchester United had become not just a great club, but a global phenomenon. The 1990s defined Manchester United as the greatest club of the modern era. From the darkness of the 70s to the glory of 1999, Ferguson had built a team that embodied resilience, faith, and dominance. By the end of the century, Manchester United were kings of England, Europe, and the world. From tragedy to triumph, Manchester United's journey had come full circle. But the story wasn't over. In the next part, we explore the 21st century, a new era of challenges, change, and global transformation. As the new millennium dawned, Manchester United stood tall, not just as England's finest, but as one of the most powerful football clubs on earth. Sir Alex Ferguson's Red Devils had conquered the 90s. Now, the challenge was to stay at the top in a fast-changing world. In 2000 and 2001, United stormed to back-to-back Premier League titles, led by captain Roy Keane, the precision of Paul Scholes, and the flair of David Beckham. They had become the team everyone wanted to beat. By the early 2000s, Manchester United wasn't just a football club, it was a global empire. Their fanbase stretched from Manchester to Malaysia, from Lagos to Los Angeles. Under Ferguson, they mastered both the pitch and the business side of football. The arrival of Cristiano Ronaldo in 2003 marked the start of a new generation, a symbol of raw talent polished by United's winning mentality. Alongside Wayne Rooney, who joined in 2004 as a teenage prodigy, Ferguson built a squad ready to dominate again. The partnership of Ronaldo and Rooney was pure fire. Together, they brought energy, hunger, and goals, lots of them. In 2007, Manchester United reclaimed the Premier League title, and in 2008, they reached the pinnacle once again, winning the UEFA Champions League in Moscow. After a dramatic penalty shootout, United were crowned champions of Europe. Ferguson had rebuilt another legendary team, and this one had the swagger of global superstars. In total, United won 3 consecutive Premier League titles from 2007 to 2009, asserting their dominance once more. As the 2010s began, time slowly caught up with the golden generation. Giggs and Scholes aged gracefully, Ronaldo had moved to Real Madrid, and new challengers like Chelsea and Manchester City began to rise. But Ferguson was never one to back down. In 2011, United won another Premier League title, and reached the Champions League final, though they fell short against Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, one of the greatest teams ever assembled. Then, in 2013, Ferguson did it again, winning his 13th Premier League title. Was the perfect ending. After 26 years, 38 trophies, and countless memories, Sir Alex Ferguson retired, leaving behind a legacy unmatched in football history. His final words to the crowd were simple: "Your job now is to stand by your new manager." But replacing a legend was never going to be easy. In came David Moyes, handpicked by Ferguson himself. Expectations were sky high, but the transition was rough. United finished 7th in the Premier League, their lowest position in the modern era. Then came Louis van Gaal, a tactical mastermind known for discipline and possession football. Under him, United won the 2016 FA Cup, bringing a brief glimmer of hope. But fans knew, the dominance of old was gone. The search for identity had begun. In 2016, the special one arrived, José Mourinho. Known for winning wherever he went, Mourinho promised trophies, and he delivered. In 2017, Manchester United won the Europa League, the League Cup, and the Community Shield, 3 trophies in one season. United were back, but in a different way, pragmatic, defensive, and structured. Yet behind the scenes, tension grew. Mourinho clashed with players, and by 2018, he was gone. When Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took charge, it felt like fate. The hero of 1999 was back, not as a player, but as manager. Under Ole, the mood lifted. United played attacking football again, bringing hope back to Old Trafford. In 2020, they finished 3rd, then 2nd the following season, led by stars like Bruno Fernandes. But trophies remained elusive. United reached several semi-finals and the Europa League final in 2021, losing on penalties to Villarreal. It was progress, but not perfection. In 2022, United appointed Ten Hag, a Dutch tactician known for discipline, youth development, and attacking football. His arrival marked a turning point. With players like Marcus Rashford, Casemiro, Lisandro Martinez, and Bruno Fernandes, United began to rediscover their identity. In 2023, Ten Hag delivered the Carabao Cup, ending a 6-year trophy drought. United also reached the FA Cup final and finished strongly in the league. By 2025, the club was rebuilding both its style and reputation. No longer the chaotic side of the post-Ferguson years, but a focused project aiming to return to the very top. From the smoke of 19th-century Manchester to the shining lights of global fame, Manchester United's journey has been one of resilience, tragedy, triumph, and transformation. They've fallen, risen, and reinvented themselves more times than any other club in history. From Newton Heath to Old Trafford, from Busby to Ferguson, and now into the future. One truth remains constant: Manchester United never die. This is Manchester United, a club